All right, so as I mentioned, I'm the director of the clinical programs here at UChicago, and this session is around clinical summer hiring. And I have, well, the agenda for the program is to talk with you a little bit about our summer program, and then to walk you through the logistics for applying for jobs in the summer and address any questions that you all might have. I don't think we'll need the whole hour. Typically, we'll go half hour or so and then we get through everything and we can move on with our day. I do have some slides to share with you all, so I'm going to share my screen and get that going. Most clinics this summer. The one that's not on the list that is the Global Human Rights Clinic, which is working on a different structure for their summer program and it won't be launching yet this summer. So what I've done here is list all the clinics that are hiring. And I'm not going to spend time today to go through each of these. Hopefully you're somewhat familiar with them from your decision to apply and to attend to our law school. But I can break them down into different categories for you. So a number of our clinics focus on litigation, and that's both on the civil side and the criminal side, as well as appellate work. I've listed those clinics here. And then we have 4 transactional clinics, all of them hiring for summer. They work with a mix of nonprofits, for-profits, emerging businesses, low-income entrepreneurs. You can see that list here. And then many of our clinics do, or most of our clinics do work on policy issues and advocacy efforts that are beyond traditional litigation or transactional work. And I've just listed 3 here that I think do a lot of that kind of work, but really all of our clinics offer opportunities to do policy advocacy work in addition to those other lawyering tasks. All right, so why would you want to work for clinics in the summer? Well, all the usual reasons for working in the clinics apply. So clinics are a great place to develop your skill set as emerging attorneys. Most of our clinics are public interest oriented, so it's a way to engage in public service. Clinics are a terrific place to try out a new area of law, right? Low barriers to entry, encourage students to experiment and try new things. And a way to interact, of course, with our tremendous clinical faculty, many of whom you will get to meet as you enter your 2nd year and 3rd year in law school. And then in particular, in the summer, clinics are a great place to work because you have no other classes to juggle. And it allows you to get a deeper dive into the clinic work. During the school year, students are typically working on a smaller subset of client matters that their clinic may be handling. And in the summer, because we're staffed so leanly, students are really involved in everything that their clinic project is working on. So you get a deeper and a broader engagement with the client matters in your clinic. Second, the student participation rules allow students who work for the clinics in the summer to pre-register in the fall without having to go through the other processes for signing up for clinics. Sorry, that's my dog in the background, as you might be hearing. Hold on a second. So registering in the fall as a returning student is a feature of the summer program. And then third, because we are all educators in the clinic, we're different from other kinds of employers in that our goal is to train students, mentor them, help them develop as professionals. It's not just about getting the work done on behalf of clients. So of course, that's a huge part of what we're doing, but we're very invested in developing all of our students as professionals. All right, so we typically, assuming that we're out from under the restrictions of the pandemic, we typically organize some softball. This is sometimes against other law schools in the area, sometimes a student faculty game. So that's a fun summer activity that we do. We organized an outing to the White Sox game. Here we are in the outfield. It's a fun day, great Chicago summer activity. White Sox are headed to the World Series. Please ignore the fact that I used this exact same slide last year. I know this year it's really going to happen. We have a good time at the game. And then Chicago in the summertime is a wonderful place to be. There's all kinds of cultural activities. downtown, out in the neighborhoods, and we try to organize some faculty student events to get people out and enjoying the city. All right, so I'm going to now take us to the portal here for applying for summer jobs that has some more logistical information for us. All right, so this is the section of the website that talks about the application process. All the clinics that are hiring are listed here with links to the web pages for each clinic. And I would also point out to you all that a great way to learn about what the clinic has been up to recently is to look at the law school announcements. So the announcement document, it's on the law school website, and then past editions of the announcements are on the law library website. And the announcements document has a section called the significant achievements of the clinical programs. And each year that section captures the highlights of the clinic's work from the past academic year. So if you check out the announcements, you can get a fairly detailed account of what each clinic has been doing in the past academic year. It gives you a good sense of the kind of work that they do in that clinic. All right, so we're hiring for the summer. This paragraph here talks about the timing and the wages. So it's an 8-week program. The start dates and end dates are set by the clinical supervisors for each of the clinics. The traditional approach is to start students basically right after first year exams are over, and then run through 8 weeks straight. And that way students are done before on-campus interviews start in early August. However, given the uncertainty about where we're going to be with the public health situation, and given different needs across different clinics for when they're anticipating major pieces of litigation will be happening in the summer, there is some flexibility built into the system. So the supervisor will work out with the students which 8 weeks during the summer they would like the students to work. So just be aware there is some flexibility there. They are full-time jobs, expectation of 37.5 hours per week. It's a full-time job. And the compensation as shown here is approximately $5,000 in compensation, which is paid to students as wages subject to withholding. Because under the employment rules, you all are our employees for the summer. So that's kind of how all that works. And then the last sentence here talks about, we often get questions about students who are also interested in working as research assistants for some of our research faculty over the summer. And that's fine, but you're not able to do both at the same time. Because again, it's for employment reasons, it would trigger overtime and just be kind of a morass to deal with. So the rule is to have just one law school job at a time, either in the clinic or as a research assistant. Okay, second, we have a window coming up starting next week when we're receiving applications. The week of January 17th through the 21st will be the time to submit your application. And we'll talk about that in a second, how you do that. It's quite simple. And then we do commit to interview all the students who apply. Those would happen as quickly as we can get organized after the application window closes. So as early as January 24th. And then as soon as we get through the interviews, we start making offers. Each student applicant gets an interview with a faculty member. For the most part, the student will interview with the faculty member in the clinic that the student has designated as their first choice for where they want to work over the summer. But not every time. You can imagine we need to balance out the interviews and the workload of the interviews across our faculty. So some students will interview with faculty who are not in their first choice clinic, but rest assured that every student is a candidate for their first choice clinic, as well as their second choice clinic. And then potentially even for clinics you didn't mention as your first or second choice, depending on how the offers sort out, how the acceptances sort out, and where the needs are as the process moves forward. All right, so then the application process itself, there's a button up here to apply, and it takes you to a Google form that collects from you just basic information, last name, first name, email, then asks you to check a box for which clinic is your first choice to work for the summer, and then check a box for which clinic is your second choice to work for the summer. And then it asks you to upload your cover letter and then to upload your resume or your CV. We do ask students when you upload those documents, please put your name in your own personal name in the name of the document, because it makes it easier to find it in the database that's created through the Google form. So please remember to do that, and the form prompts you to include that information in the file names as well. So then we often get questions about like what should the cover letter say, what should be in it, and I think you should treat this as the same way you would for a cover letter for any position that you're applying to, right? Your cover letter is your opportunity to express interest, to make a credible case of why you're interested, and then what you have to offer as a candidate, all in a short, succinct statement. The cover letter, we do ask that you state in your cover letter and in the application portal which are your top 2 clinics to work in for the summer, and to rank them as your first choice and your second choice. But we recognize that many students might pretty evenly weight which clinics they want to work in, or don't have a strong preference as between their first 2 choices. And that's the kind of information that we encourage you to put in your cover letter, right? It helps us to get a more nuanced sense of what your preferences are and what your interests are. All right, so at this point, I'm going to stop the screen share and open it up for questions.
Hi, I have 2 questions. The first is, how many students approximately does each clinic usually take? And my second question is just if you know what the dates of OCI are, which I know is kind of unrelated, but.
Each of the clinical projects that we've listed will hire 2 students for the summer, with the exception being that the Institute for Justice Clinic on Entrepreneurship hires 3 students. As far as the dates for OCI, I don't think it's set in stone yet. I know, Susan Curry, I see you are
Yes.
here. Do you want to speak to that question?
The actual dates haven't been released yet, but it will likely start sometime in the first week of August.
Hi, thank you so much for doing this. I just wanted to ask, is the work definitely in person, or is it definitely remote? Is there an option there?
It will depend on the public health situation, but the expectation and the norm is for it to be in person. So we have not entertained remote students except when the pandemic has required it. So unless the pandemic requires it, expect these to be full-time in-person positions.
Yeah, I was wondering what you've heard about how employers view like later employers for the second 2L summer or for post-graduation, how they view students who have worked in the clinics as compared especially to other kinds of quality internships outside of the law school.
I'm not sure I'm in the best situation to answer from a comparative perspective, but I can say that employers very much value the experience that you get in the clinic. The more sophisticated ones recognize the value of the teaching aspect of the clinic, in addition to just the raw kind of client experience that students are receiving. So they would view it as a plus in your file to receive that kind of tutelage early in your careers. I think it's also the case that our clinicians are very well respected in their field. And so they are known to people in practice, particularly in public interest fields, and having that exposure to a really fine practitioner, and having them as a recommender very much helps public interest interested students in looking for future public interest jobs.
Can I pop in here too?
Please do.
On this one. And this may not be the question behind your question, but I do often get this question from students who have concerns about working for the law school, either in a clinical position or as an RA, and is that viewed as somehow lesser than working in the field, whatever geographic region you choose. And I think that might be the case for some schools, but it is absolutely not the case for this school, and frankly, for most of the elite law schools. There are students who come to this institution purely to be an RA for X professor or to work for one or more of our clinics. And you can, if you really want to, ask the Career Services Office for data on this, but I can tell you right now that 100% of clinical student workers who work in the clinics for their 1L summer successfully get jobs that they want for their 2L summer.
I just wanted to know when we would have to accept an offer if we are given one, and what the timeline for that looks like.
So we typically have usually like 3 times the number of students than we do slots available. So they're very competitive positions. And we do ask students to respond very quickly when they do receive offers, because we're trying to be fair to the students who are still waiting to hear back from us. So that typically means giving students a 5-day response window to respond to an offer. If a student really has a compelling reason why they need an extension, we will, think about that, but the responses need to be prompt so that we can treat the whole pool fairly. And we try to wrap up the process on the same schedule as other public interest employers are wrapping up. So usually that means by, the middle of February, we hope to be done or something close to that. Any remaining questions? Or Susan Curry, can you think of anything that we haven't addressed that?
I can think of only one thing, and it's a logistical thing, which may be evident already to all of you, which is if you're lucky enough to get an offer from the clinics and accept it, you do not need to, and in fact shouldn't, sign up for the guaranteed summer public service stipend, because as Jeff has mentioned, these are wage earning positions with the law school, whereas the stipends are not.
I wanted to ask what happens if we accept a position with one of the clinics and then receive kind of a non-retractable offer from another employer outside of the law school, especially if working remote, is that allowed, or what are the guidelines there?
Let me just make sure I understand the question. So I think the question is, if you've accepted a clinic position, but then you have an offer from another employer, is it okay to accept the alternative offer? And do I have that right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So I would say the answer is no. If you've accepted the clinic position, then you're locked in for the clinic, and should not be entertaining offers or need to turn down subsequently received offers from other employers. Again, that's I think that's just the norm across employment context, but also I think to keep things fair for the entire applicant pool of all the students, that's the way it should be handled. I recognize that things, we need to have some flexibility or be prepared to be flexible if things take a turn with the pandemic, and if things need to shift to remote, and that creates issues for people. Of course, we'll talk about that. We'll listen to that. But I think barring anything extreme like that.
Yeah. Could I clarify my question? I was actually asking if it's possible to work both jobs, not if it's possible to renege on the clinic offer.
I see. I don't know, Susan, if you have any advice on that. There's no restriction. I mean, I don't think anyone can prevent people from working 2 jobs, but it would be tough because the clinic job is a full-time job. And so depending, I'm not sure what the other position is, but if it's also a full-time job, there's some math problems there that that come to bear. But one could imagine a student working full-time in the clinic and then having a part-time job after hours somewhere else if that other employer were willing to entertain that.
Yes, that's right. One job at a time. You can't, do an internship at an agency or an employer in the field for those same 8 weeks, get the stipend, and then also work full-time at the law school in a clinic position or an RA.
I'm a 1L and I was looking at the clinic websites, and some of them have like required or suggested classes that you take as a 2L. So I was wondering, just in the interest of kind of preserving the 1 and 2 ranking spots, are there any clinics that you know or know already wouldn't accept 1L students and so we shouldn't apply to?
It's a great question. All of the clinics accept 1L students, or you will at that time be rising 2Ls. So that's not a problem. Those suggested classes, we all recognize you can't have taken those yet, and that's fine. So the bulk of our applicants are folks in your position who are 1L students heading towards their 2L year.
That question reminded me of this. Some 1Ls are wondering if they will stand as good a chance of getting these jobs because they're concerned about 2L applications. And I try to explain to them that this is primarily a 1L program. I thought maybe you could share with them, Jeff, some data on how unusual it is to have 2L summer internships.
Yeah, it is predominantly a 1L program. I can think of, in the many years I've been doing this, I think the number of 2Ls that we've had has been, a tiny handful. So it really is this year's 1L class that we expect to be applying for these positions. And that's certainly been the case historically.
Are letters of recommendation or writing samples or anything in addition to the resume and cover letter and questionnaire required for applications?
They are not required. It's just the CV and the cover letter. All right, well, seeing no further questions, I think we can break and give you back the rest of your lunch hour. I'm certainly reachable if folks have questions after the fact, and you can find me by email or my phone number on the website. But great to see all of you. Thank you so much for your interest. Looking forward to meeting many of you. Hope that you will apply and we'll get a chance to interview and talk more about our summer program.